Welcome everybody to a new episode of Disabled Lawyer and Proud. Today we have Christina Warner. Christina Warner is a barrister at Goldsmith Chambers. Christina practices in family and animal protection law. Christina is described by her clients as a powerful advocate with human choice. Christina has been influential in raising the awareness of disabled practitioners and the needs of LGBT people, Latinx communities, and disabled people in accessing the family courts, as well as promoting the rights generally. Christina is described as a pioneer in the field of animal protection law and has fought hard to demonstrate and bring attention to the link between animal violence with children and domestic abuse. Christina is a familiar face to those who are interested in disability in law, as she has connections with BJ Bar, Mingle Couples, New Disability Forum, and of course the Association of Disabled Lawyers. Welcome, Christina. It's great to have you.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you. I'm really pleased to be here.
Yeah, and we're delighted to have you. Most of your work outside of court, at least, and inside to some extent, is around disability. What does being disabled mean to you?
What does disabled mean to me? So I was born able-bodied, and it was a few years ago that I was diagnosed with Stargardt's, and that's a form of juvenile macular degeneration. So the way I describe it to people is it's how older people lose their eyesight, but happening to younger people. My brother has the same condition as well, and it basically means that I'm losing my eyesight. So that is the main challenge that I face, is navigating the world as a person with low vision, both as a barrister in front of judges, as well as my day-to-day life. So disability is something that impacts both how I contribute to my community, the disabled community, as well as who I am as a practitioner now. So that's what I think disability means to me, but I know it's a very personal thing. We are, all of those of us of the disabled community, we're all as individual as the challenges we face. Similarly, my brother has the same condition, but we have very different life experiences.
What I like about the disabled community is we all have different impairments or disabilities, and we all come from different backgrounds. But we all have a common understanding of the difficulties disabled people facing. We work really hard to overcome them and support each other. That's what I like about our disabled community.
Sorry, Dan. Sorry, I cut you off. I was eager to talk. I cut you off.
Go on.
No, I agree. And I think by people, I mean able-bodied people, because I was one of them, and I was living how disability impacts people through my brother for a long time. I was looking from the outside, and now, although I knew that Stargardt's being a genetic condition was likely to affect me, it manifested much slower with me than it did with my brother. So I was witnessing it as a bystander to a certain extent until it became personal to me. And I totally agree, Dan, that we're a very diverse community, but I think we have so much in common. And we actually have a lot in common as well with able-bodied people, because the more I speak about disability, the more the able-bodied community realizes that it affects them too. They may be carers. They may be carers for a parent with dementia, a child with autism, and they themselves may have faced challenges of chronic fatigue. I've had colleagues talk to me about postnatal depression, endometriosis. So, and I think the sense of both isolation and pride, I think, is a common thread amongst us all. And I think what also needs to be remembered is that the adjustments that or the small changes that could help me navigate the world may well help someone like you, Dan, who's a wheelchair user or uses a walking aid. So an example of that would be ramps. Ramps, although I am not restricted from a mobility standpoint, mine is a sensory impairment. Stairs can be quite difficult if they don't have highlighted nosing on them. So if the edge of the step isn't highlighted and it's all one color, I can find that quite challenging. So having a ramp would assist me in getting to where I need to be. But instantly, I don't think people assume that that would be the case with someone that's visually impaired. But I think the more we talk about this, the more we realize how much we have in common, and how that's, I think those walls of isolation, they fall down, they come down, I think, by talking and by having open and frank conversations about our challenges.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. A disabled warrior and proud thing is being more CGI. Well, it has more CGI because of disability. Primer, what goes disability prime means here?
It's taken me a long time to get here. It's been a journey, but I feel very proud to be part of the community we've just mentioned, to be part of a diverse, amazing group of people who have so much to offer, and our skills are so varied and we're so diverse that from that standpoint, being part of a community and the sense of community that there is makes me proud to be disabled because of what we're achieving. But as an individual, I think it's the day-to-day things, the challenges, that things that were easy for me before are difficult. And because Stargardt is progressive, it's only going one way. It's only, unfortunately, it's only going to get worse, or it's going to get more challenging. And I've got to a point where I feel okay with that now. It was very isolating and very sad, as I know a lot of able-bodied people who then encounter and acquire a disability often say is the case as well. But a sense of pride of knowing that I am able to ask for help. There's no shame in that. And I'm able to have conversations with other disabled people or able-bodied people and listen to their experiences and share mine. Again, breaking down those barriers and having conversations with people about how much we do really have in common.
Yeah, it really speaks to me when you talk about our commonality and that support that we get from each other. I do think it's important, and I want to encourage whoever's watching to support people around them, and because we are one community, as you say. You're quite an established barrister. I'm in practice for around 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a bit more about what you do and what being a barrister involves?
Yeah, so I originally qualified as a solicitor, and then I cross-qualified as a barrister. So I qualified as a solicitor at a high street firm in Brixton, and I practiced in criminal defence, prison law, and in family. And I was very lucky because when I qualified, I'd undertaken what's called the higher rights of audience. So that enables solicitors to have level rights of audience as barristers do. And eventually I decided to cross over to the bar. I didn't think that anyone would be interested in offering me tenancy. I thought it was a bit ridiculous when someone mentioned to me, oh, you should apply for tenancy, see if you get it. And I was very, very lucky. And I've practiced as a barrister since 2014. I was called to the bar, but I started my training contract as a solicitor in 2010. Yeah. And being a barrister for me, we are at the front line. So we are the ones that I think deal with the most stressful point of proceedings. So and I know this because having been a solicitor, I've been on the other side of the desk. So I've been on the desk when I've taken initial instructions from clients and really got to know them and their cases. And by the time a case reaches a barrister, it really is in full swing. So we are in front of judges presenting cases and really ensuring that our clients' voices are heard. That's ultimately what everyone wants. They want to be heard. And that's a barrister's job, I believe, to ensure that your client's voice is heard and their case is put. So that's what makes me very proud to be a barrister. My practice areas, I crossed over from crime. I worked in criminal defense for a while and then I prosecuted. And now I have a 90% family practice with an aside in animal protection, which overlaps with family to a certain extent. And I represent parents that are seeking to spend time with their children. I represent victims and those that have been accused of domestic abuse. I sometimes represent children as well. And I also speak and write and contribute to the narrative on animal protection as well. So my main area is the overlap between family and animal protection, and that really is domestic abuse. So how companion animals get caught in the crossfire of domestic abuse, and when they are both primary and secondary victims of the abuse within as companion animals within an abusive household. So that's, I think, in a kind of nutshell, what my practice areas are.
You have such an interesting practice. I imagine it brings both extremely positive experiences and some difficult experiences. What have been the best experiences of your career?
I think the best experiences of my career is where I see individuals, when I see their progression to the end of proceedings. So examples of that would be, well, if I put it to you like this, no one ever really approaches a lawyer until the going is bad, until things are tough. If you're approaching a lawyer because things are good, it's because you're anticipating they're going to go sour. So I like to think that by the time proceedings have finished, there's been some form of closure for my clients. And I think what's unique about family practice is that matters or the situation could have gone on for years. You could have been in an abusive marriage for decades. A child could have been subject to abuse for years. And I think that's what makes family practice so unique, that your clients could have been entrenched within their situation for very many years. So untangling those issues. And I find as well, as a family practitioner, you become almost a therapist or a counselor. That's part of your job, to help your clients recover emotionally from what they've encountered, so that by the time the proceedings come to an end, they're able to move on and the proceedings become rear view for them. So an example would be when I've had victims of domestic abuse and they've come in to see me as just shells of people, shells of individuals, just wounded, just emotionally damaged, sometimes physically they've been harmed as well. And at the end of the proceedings, to see them spread their wings and to see them then tell me that they've got a new partner, or that they're planning on setting up a business, or they're going to go back to school and get a certificate or a diploma, that for me, that is what makes the job worthwhile. And especially when you hear as well that proceedings have come to an end and that they are able to emotionally process that they can move forward, to give themselves that permission. So the proceedings are over and they're looking forward to a bright future. That's what makes it all worthwhile, I think.
Yeah, I guess in many ways you could say that you are helping people to liberate themselves, and that's a very rewarding thing to do, and it makes me fantastic to be able to be part of that process.
Yeah,
Now,
it's humbling. Yeah, definitely.
every career has good points and bad points. What has been the worst experiences of your career?
The worst experiences of my career, I think it's sometimes it's difficult not to take the case with you. So sometimes I think it's tough to let go of your feelings towards a case, or in particular, if there has been certain types of abuse. It can be really tough to read about those details, to view the footage, to see the photos. That can be really, really tough. And I think that's why barristers, that's why I think it's so important to have a good support network around you in chambers or as a solicitor in your office, so you don't keep that to yourself, that you're able to, if you are feeling that you're overwhelmed, overloaded emotionally or logistically by your workload, by virtue of the sensitive cases that we deal with, that can be really tough to just close the file or close your laptop and that's the end of it. It does play on your mind. But I would say the day that it doesn't, I think is the day that I need to leave the bar, because the day you stop caring is the day that you're not fit for purpose. I think we have to care because that's part of our job description as family practitioners.
Absolutely, you put it so well. What advice would you give to anyone aspiring for a similar curriculum when you've enjoyed?
But disabled students or just law students generally?
In general, or if you want to give general advice and some advice to disabled students that become, or answer however you feel most appropriate.
Yeah. I think generally keep going, because it is tough out there. And when I was at law school, so I did the LPC and I did what's called a part-time study training contract. So I worked and I did my training contract at the same time. And it was tough. It was really, really tough. And I needed to work. I had to work. I needed the finances. It is really tough. And I think there can be some really dark days when you can't see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I think that's really tough. That's why it's important to factor in time for yourself if you can. And I know those few hours you'd probably rather be sleeping. But I think for disabled students who are aspiring barristers, reach out to us, because I think it's obvious that I can talk for hours about anything to do with the bar and about being a disabled barrister. Reach out to us, because it does, even though it's better now, I think there was a period of time where there was a real lack of support for disabled practitioners, let alone disabled students thinking of a career at the bar. So reach out to us and see if there's anything we can assist with. There are lots of associations, obviously ADL, lots of associations that you can now, there are mentoring schemes, and building a community and a support network around you is essential. I just don't think that you can have a career at the bar without having that sense of community, wherever you draw that support from. I think that's really, really important.
Community is great, and for people that might not realize, the disabled community in law is quite strong. I mean, a lot of us know each other quite well, and all the associations and organizations often work together. Even the organizations are intimate with one another. and there's a real sense of community about it. Also, if you do need support, there will always be someone to offer it. And
Always.
the association will do its best to connect people in any way it can.
Definitely. It's the next, the way I see it is I owe so much to the barristers with disabilities before me. I am in touch with them and they are phenomenal. Some of them are still in practice and they're pioneers. They're pioneers because it is tough. It is tough being a barrister with a disability, pushing to maintain your practice and ensuring that you are growing your practice, that you're thriving as a practitioner as well. And I can only imagine how tough it must have been for those that were called to the bar in the 90s and in the 2000s. And I feel that I owe so much to them. And I think paying that forward to the next generation of barristers, I feel is my responsibility. And it's to ensure that the work that those that came before me and the work that I'm doing is passed down to the next generation, because that's how the bar is going to diversify. That's how we'll get greater representation, because as we know, barristers with disabilities are woefully underrepresented at the bar in the legal profession generally. So it's essential that barristers of my generation, of my years of call, invest in the generation that's coming up after us to make sure that momentum keeps going.
Absolutely. And just to say, even if you're not disabled and you feel you need support, there are many different organizations in the profession or your legal professions that you can get support from. We have LGBT forums, we have LGBT organizations, we have people from different backgrounds who work together on common goals. Or even if you haven't got a minority social identity, there will be people you have things in common with in the profession, and I'm sure you can reach out and people will support you. Generally, barristers want to support people who want to come in the profession, and we're helping any way we can. You spoke a lot about the next generation, and I can't agree more about the importance of that. And I think even now, people like you make a big difference to how many disabled students are trying to get into the profession. Well, more likely, what would you want people to take away from your journey?
In terms of me as a practitioner, or in terms of me as a disabled person? Or either?
Or either as a practitioner, or a disabled person, or as a disabled practitioner.
Or as a disabled practitioner. I think the thing is, I don't consider myself to be anything particularly special. I don't consider myself to be obviously I'm disabled because the way I navigate the world is different to the average able-bodied person. So I'm reminded every day that I'm impaired in some way. But I don't consider myself to particularly be a pioneer, because it's just my day to day. I'm just going to work, reading my papers, going to court. And I think it's become so second nature for me to do the things that I need to do to ensure that I can get to work, that all of those steps that are in place because my sight is impaired don't seem like, they're not extraordinary for me. They're not out of the ordinary. That's just something I have to do. And I think that what I would want people to take away is that to please understand that we have so much more in common than we have that sets us apart. Because now that it took me a long time to come to terms with the fact that I would publicly as someone who is able-bodied passing, again, because mine is not a mobility impairment, but a sight impairment, having to tell court staff, having to tell opposing counsel, having to tell my clients I am low vision, that was very tough for me. But I have found that's always 9 times out of 10, whoever I've told has wanted to share their story with me about either caring for someone with a disability, caring for a child, caring for a parent, or they know someone that has a disability. And I think that commonality and that interest in each other is what breaks down those barriers. And that's what I would want people to take away. Just talk to each other and show some kindness. I think because kindness goes a very, very long way and it costs nothing.
Kindness can never be underestimated.
Never. And it's free. It's free.
It's free and easily to give. Easily given, I should say. You've been an advocate for LGBT people, Latinx people, and disabled people for some time. What do you think about the common state around disability rights in general?
I think we all know that where there are economic cuts, disabled people are the first to suffer. I do believe, and I'm hopeful, that there is an awakening in the public consciousness of disabled rights, especially with campaigns such as the We Are the 15 campaign. So 15% of the world's population considers themselves to have some form of a disability. I think as well, I'm finding a lot of my clients are parenting children with autism or ADHD, and the conversation is to neurodiversity, although I appreciate that some of the neurodiverse community don't consider themselves to be disabled, but having conversations about how we are individuals, I think is very important. I'm hopeful that those conversations, and I'm hopeful that the such as the Dispatches documentary that there was as to the cuts in benefits to disabled people is prompting conversation, or is prompting people to think a little bit. Because with the times that we're living in the cost of living crisis, and the fact as well that the sense of isolation that disabled people, especially when some of us are dependent on carers, sense of isolation over COVID, the suffering, the buck stops with us. We're always the first to suffer. And I feel like we're the last to be heard. And that has to stop, because that just plays into the idea that we are not worthy of being listened to. And that is a breach of our human rights, because we're all entitled to be heard.
We are indeed. I agree, it has been a difficult time for disabled people, particularly around getting financial support. There's been a narrative for some time that disabled people are often benefit salaries and not wanting to work, when in actual fact it's often rebellious in society that are stopping people from leading independent lives. And I think we need to change that narrative and provide the funding or the investment in enabling disabled people to lead independent lives. It's just a demeaning narrative, and it really needs to change.
Well, it reduces us down to being people with disabilities, regardless of the skills that we have to offer, the knowledge, the qualifications, the academia behind us. It reduces us to our disability, and that's unacceptable, because we are so much more than that.
We really are. Well, from my own experience, sometimes I do take advantage of being reduced down to impairment, because it means when I go out and about, nobody will ever expect me to do what I do in life. So it allows me to have some sort of anonymity in life sometimes.
Nice, going in there stealth stealth. I like
I'm giving you that show.
like a James Bond spy. I like it.
It's really ought to change.
Yeah, I like it.
It's been fantastic having you on the table.
You're so welcome.
I'm delighted to be able to speak with you in this campaign, even though I often speak to you.
Oh, all day, every day.
Well, thank you for coming on. For people who don't know who I am the chair of the Association of Disabled Lawyers. Thank you for watching another episode, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.